Hello, this is Alice Wheaton. Thank you for joining me today, and we're going to talk about one of the great big myths of selling. And that big myth is that you have to have a relationship with the client in order to get the deal. Nothing could be further from the truth. Now, is it good to have a relationship with your client? Yes, it doesn't hurt. But I always ask my clients as we're going through an interview process about whether or not I would be a good fit for their sales training and their sales team development. I always ask them, what is your sales model? And without fail, they say relationship selling. And then I ask, well, I'm curious. Would you like to have a relationship with me, or would you like to have systems and processes that will help your sales team meet and exceed their budget? And without fail, they say, I would like the latter. And so you see, relationships are really, really, really important to the client, to the salespeople rather. But no prospect or client got out of bed this morning and thought to themselves, I am down a friend or two, and I would really like a salesperson to call me. And so relationships is an entity that can't be measured. We all have different attitudes about what makes up a good relationship. Some people think a great relationship is where there's never, ever any conflict. Another person might think, well, conflict is necessary in order to clear up issues. And so when salespeople walk into a client's office, they sit in front of the customer and they make nice. What I mean by that is they talk small talk, and they are approval-seeking missiles oftentimes without the warhead, because they're looking for the approval. They're looking for the client to give them some indication that they're approved of or liked or that they're being received well. What happens is that salespeople often talk 4 minutes out of 5, and clients are looking at their watch and thinking, shut the bleep up. Get the bleep out of my office. And they can't say that. And so what they say is, well, can you put this in writing? Salespeople say, yes, of course. And what they have then is a punishment proposal. Punishment proposals almost never, ever come to fruition. And so when the customer then gets another call, a prospect gets another call from another salesperson, what will happen is that they will say, I'm sorry, I don't have time. Now, it's not that they don't have time. It's just that they were bored to death and they had 45 minutes wasted last week, and there's no way that they want to risk that again. And so that's why the objection, I don't have time, exists. And so when the salesperson leaves with this punishment proposal request, they shake hands with the prospect and they say, thank you very much. If there's anything I can do, you be sure to give me a call. And the clients, of course, will say, of course I will. They walk out thinking that they began the formation of a relationship, and nothing could be further from the truth. And so I'm going to show you today how you can never, ever, ever again be caught in the trap of a punishment proposal. So punishment proposals are something that, every salesperson wants to have a lot of prospects in the pipeline. And so it makes sense to say yes to a request. But what happens is that it eats up tons and tons and tons of time, sales time, and resources. So when a client meets with a salesperson, their consideration is to find out if this salesperson can uncover a way that they can do business together faster and easier. In short, they're looking for the salesperson to identify a potential problem or a current problem. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. And so here's how it typically works with a salesperson. We'll look at the agenda of the salesperson in the pyramid there on your left. The salesperson wants to build a rapport. They want to build trust. They want client to respect them, and they want to be seen as credible. The biggest amount of time that salespersons spend is on building rapport. That is the opposite of what a client wants. A client wants to see you as credible, which means that when you walk in, you know the top 3 issues of that industry. What are the top 3 problems of an industry that you're working in? And you want to be able to talk about some innovative ways that other companies in your industry are solving these problems. And so the client or prospect then sees you as credible. When they see you as credible, someone who is worth their time, then they will assign respect to you. They won't necessarily trust you immediately. They will assign respect. And the reason why is trust does not occur until the client has begun to practice and gathered evidence that you are trustworthy. And that's called discernment. The clients want to practice a level of discernment to find out if you're trustworthy. I had someone email me 2 days ago and said, do you do coaching for sales managers? I emailed back and said, yes, I do. And I'd love to say yes to this assignment, but the fact is, I don't know if we'd be a match. I would like to meet with you so that we can discuss the situation as it is now, what you've actually tried to do to change the situation, and what your situation you'd like it to be in the future. Now, most salespeople, most coaches especially, will jump into the fray and believe that they have the answer. The truth is, I don't know. I do not know if we'd be a match. I do not know what this client's threshold for change is. I don't know what the client's threshold for taking remedial action is. I need to find out that. And so when I have come to the client and I have some intelligent questions to ask that are relevant to his issues, then the client will begin to feel trust. And then to feel trust, and then they employ me, and I work with their salespeople, and I implement processes and programs, and I get change. Maybe they will feel rapport, and maybe they will not, because you see, some clients don't. I have another client that I was doing some work on what is the difference between what is the components of business development. And the components of business development are sales plus marketing plus customer service. And someone said, well, what's the difference? I gave them an example and said the difference is that marketing is if you go for lunch with a client and you talk about the weather, whether or not the Leafs might win the Stanley Cup this year, and then you shake hands and say, if there's anything I can do, you be sure to give me a call. That's marketing. Sales would be when you go for lunch with a client and you understand what projects are on the back burner and how you can help them solve those projects, and you ask for the opportunity to do so. That's sales. So the client that was auditing my group session, after I said that, he got up and left because I had demonstrated what he wanted his team to know. But I can guarantee you this, there will never, ever be a high degree of rapport between us because that's not his agenda. He's not looking for a new friend. He's not looking to, he's extremely busy, and socializing with one of his suppliers is not high on the priority list. But a lot of salespeople think that clients want to socialize with suppliers. Nothing could be further from the truth. Some might, but when a client is highly sociable, then I am highly suspicious. So there are several things that come between you and building a relationship anyway. One of them is that right now there's a distributed buying process. There might be several offices involved with making that decision, and you get to understand this distributed buying process I would just draw a circle, and then I would have satellite circles outside of that big circle and say, please let me know who is where, who's affected in this particular satellite, who in this satellite, and so on. And then you've got the whole big picture of the company. Until you understand who is going to be affecting the decision-making process, it really doesn't matter how much the client likes you, because there's so many other people that's going to be impacted by the decision. But salespeople often focus on one particular person, much to their disadvantage. And when you focus on one particular person, I have never asked anyone yet the question, are you the decision maker in this process, without them saying yes? Because the truth is, if they can say no, they're a decision maker. But you want to be able to know if they can make a decision based on a handshake, as it were. But you know what? In a distributed sales decision-making process, there are maybe 5 people or 10 people that you'd have to shake hands with. And so if you don't know how to ask that question, then you can't really get the information that you need in order to go forward. And then you think to yourself, well, I can't go over my contact's head. Well, yes, you can, and you must. And the reason is that what happens if you deliver a proposal to this one contact, and he or she needs to take it to 4 or 5 different people, and they're intimidated by taking it to a committee meeting because they don't like to speak up in public. Well, if you can't negotiate your way to get an appointment with that committee meeting, then your proposal is going to be just one of many, even though you may have enjoyed the company of your contact. You need to be able to negotiate with your prospect to be able to find out who is making the decision and where. And so the term I use for that is called understanding the migratory path of your proposal. And when you understand the migratory path of your proposal, you understand how the decision is made and who is going to influence that. You need to know that way before you get to the proposal writing stage. Here's how you might do that. So think about this: when a flock of birds leave a certain territory and they fly south, they're going to be stopping at ponds and rivers and marshes, and they stop there for 3 or 4 reasons. 1 is to get food, 2 to get shelter and rest, 3 maybe to mate so that they have babies for next year. And so when those needs are satisfied, they move on to another pond and another pond and another pond. And so your proposal is the same thing. It goes from you to your prospect. Whose computer does it go to next? And what is that person going to be looking for? What's their title? What's they going to be looking for? When you understand that and its final, its circuitous path, and finally what each of those characters want, then you can answer that in your proposal. And then you're going to have a really good chance of getting the deal, because your proposal will contain all that. Your competitors likely will not. And so if you can't meet with all of them personally, make sure, because they're in a different location, for instance, make sure that you've got all of that information in your proposal. Now, we talked earlier about talking 4 minutes out of 5. I call that show up and throw up. And so how you deal with that is you make sure that you have a list of questions prepared. You have your sales process already outlined. You have your competitive advantage statement. You know why you stand out from the crowd, and you're able to measure that. You could say, you know what, 97% of the clients that use us come back year after year after year. That's a competitive advantage statement because it can be measured. And so when you meet with a client, you avoid showing up and throwing up by having a plan. You have your first 3 questions to bridge the gap between first meeting a stranger and then getting into the details. And those three questions are not personal, but they are business/personal. And what that I mean is, you know, how long have you lived? How long have you worked here at this company? What changes have you seen? How has that impacted your department, et cetera? They're general, broad-based questions, but they're not to do with your issues. And so then you ask questions that deal with the issues. You want to know what their problems are. And from my perspective, understanding three problems is good. And then you go to the next area where you reiterate the problem and ask what the consequences are. And I'll give you an example of that later on. And once you've done that, then you can brainstorm with the client about a certain amount of solutions that you'll be able to find. So what you do instead of showing up and throwing up is you show up and ask questions. And you ask really, really, really quality questions. And you stand out from the crowd. So I promised you that I would show you a process. So the problem is the client wants to solve a problem, not meet a new friend. So let's say the client has a problem. They never, ever, ever do business and make a decision because of the problem, although lots of people think they do. Think if I can identify enough problems, my client will go with me. Nope. It's not the problem that causes people to make a decision. I'll give you an example. I bought my house 12 years ago, and when I moved in, the spare bathroom was all beige, except that after having 5 or 6 baths, the beige started to peel off, and what I saw underneath was a turquoise bathtub. Now, the turquoise bathtub was a problem. I kind of admired the old gal that I bought it from, and she was going to a retirement home because she clearly just spray painted the bathtub. So it peeled off, and I had a streaky turquoise bathtub. Now, and I had that for 4 or 5 years, until one day my friend from Australia, Jacqueline, phoned and said, I'm coming to Canada to visit you, and I'll be there in 5 days. Now then, there were consequences. So the consequences of the problem included I was going to be embarrassed. The other one was I was going to be second guessing her all the time and wondering if she's thinking that I'm slovenly or I'm not house proud or something like that. And number 3, I was going to have to felt like I was going to have to defend and justify myself all the time. So those were 3 key consequences that I did not want to have. But understand that those consequences did not occur until long after the problem did. And so I'm happy to say that 3 days later, after receiving her call, the bath fitter was $3,500 richer, and I had a beige bathtub. So you see, it's your job, it's incumbent on you to be able to identify the client's problems, but to take it one step further and uncover at least 3 consequences of each problem. And the consequence could be stress, could be decreased production, it could be decreased quality, it could be affecting the morale of their employees, it could be having to be second to the competition. It might be all kinds of consequences, but until you ask, you won't know. And oftentimes, what's really interesting is that clients identify consequences that they had not thought of before, or were in the back burner and not brought to the front burner of their mind. So let's look now at these concentric circles, and I love this. So this is how you categorize your clients. So you have your A clients, your B clients, and your C clients. And then you have A customer service, B customer service, and C customer service. And an A client always wants A customer service. A B client always wants A quality customer service. And a C client always wants A quality customer service. So let's look at what an A client would be. An A client would be someone perhaps who returns your calls quickly. One of my indicators of an A client for me is someone that sees my first proposal as first draft. and they help me rewrite it so that they can sell me internally. When that happens, then I know that that they're an A client, but also I'm seen as an A supplier. In fact, recently I had a client call me and say, you know, I was reviewing that information about the ABC client, and I just wanted to know, do you see us as an A client? Because we'd really like it if you did. And so when I go on calls with my clients, with sales reps that I work with, one of the questions we ask is, we draw the concentric circle and say, would you be willing to let us know where you see us as an A, B, or C supplier? And I promise no matter what choice you make, we won't try and defend and justify ourselves. We would love this information so that we can get better in what we do. And you know, I've never had a client not do that. They'll point to, yes, you're an A, or yes, you're a B. And so my clients, they come out of the meeting when they're elated because the clients tell them that they're an A if they're an A. And if they're not an A, then it's an opportunity for us to say, okay, I'm so grateful for this knowledge. What would it take for us to become one of your A suppliers? So the A supplier is someone who returns your calls, someone who buys not only on price. They look at the other 4 areas of doing business, and of course is timing, need, quality, price, and service. And so they are clients that fit, that they have a high need for all 5 of those. A B client is someone that might take days to return your call. They do send your quote out for 3 or 4 other quotes, and you will get your share, but you won't get the majority of the work. A C client is someone that always includes somebody else into the mix. They will quibble on price. They probably won't pay as fast. And of course, they'll be higher maintenance. Now, you know what's really interesting, and I invite you to do, to take these 3 concentric circles and build it up and ask yourself, where am I as a supplier? So what is an A supplier like? An A supplier is someone that returns their calls with an accountability attached. My personal voicemail says, this is Alice Wheaton. My goal is to return your call in 4 hours, which means that when I'm in a conference or when I'm doing training at 10 o'clock and at 2 o'clock and at 4 o'clock, I am checking my voicemails because I want to use that time to keep my promises. An A supplier is someone who, when they say I'll have something to you on Tuesday, it does. If they can't for some reason, they call up and renegotiate. So an A supplier is someone who is accountable, responsible, which of course equals trustworthy. You're simply not trustworthy if you're not accountable and responsible. And so spend some time now and looking at your, you know, people talk about the top 20% of their clients give them 80% of their business. Well, what makes your clients nestled into the top 20%? Why are they there? And if you spend some time doing this, and if you're a sales manager, this is a great exercise to do with your sales team. And so from now on, be really clear if your clients are an A, B, or a C. If they're a C client, guess what kind of proposals you're often going to get? You guessed it. You're going to be getting punishment proposals from them. And so when you get so many punishment proposals, it's tough to say, you know, I'm sorry, I don't think that we're a match at this time. But what happens if you have a C client? You can transition them to a B client by asking them the questions and understanding you have a selling process, they have a buying process, and it's really important for you to understand their buying process. And someone who is fishing with a punishment proposal is not going to know what the key issues of the other people who are involved in the decision are. So they're not going to be able to answer that. So you know that it's just a notion that this person had versus strategic request. So we talked earlier about giving your word and keeping it. I call this the art of up-leveling your client relationship. Now, a few years ago, we were talking about trusting the untrustworthy. And of course, like everyone else, I've trusted more than I wish of untrustworthy people. And then it occurred to me, what is my formula? Is there a formula? And so I determined that accountability plus responsibility equals trustworthy. So it's pretty impossible to be 100% of anything 100% of the time. But if you are going to be 100%, if you make a promise, for instance, and you can't deliver, well, then you're not accountable after all. But if you call the client and renegotiate, take responsibility, shift the burden of blame, as it were, onto your own shoulders instead of the supplier or the distributor or the trucking company or whatever, then you are responsible. To the extent that you are accountable and responsible is the extent that your clients will see you as trustworthy. And remember earlier that trust was really important to a client, and trust is the hardest to build, but it's the fastest to go. When trust is compromised, it can be rebuilt again if you take the responsibility and the accountability and own that. But if you shift the burden of blame, defend, or justify, you're seen, as one of my clients said, just another salesperson. So I want to thank you for joining me today. And, you know, relationships are good. They're wonderful. They're good as far as they go, but they don't go far enough. And so what would it be like then for you to not only have rapport, but to have the respect and the trust and the credibility with your clients? That's called working smart, not hard. At that point, that's when you can tap into the good graces of others, where you get referral, where somehow people call you out of the blue, and even they sometimes don't remember who gave them their name, but they know that someone did. So thanks for being with me today. I look forward to working with you in the future. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me, alice@alicewheaton.com. Bye for now.